CBSE Board, Class 11, History, Chapter 4, Part 18, Audio by Renee Matthew. So this was the most important Japanese scholar of China. Okay, he was living in China, that is why it is written like that. Nato Conan's writing influenced scholars worldwide. And he used a lot of tools of Western historiography. He started building on long tradition of studying China, as well as bringing his experience as a journalist there. He took a lot of effort to study China just like that. New tools were actually used for this purpose, especially of the Western historiography. Okay? He actually helped to establish the Department of Oriental Studies in Kyoto. Oriental Studies in the Kyoto University in 1907. In Shinaran, he argued that Republican government always offered the Chinese a way to put an end to aristocratic control. So when you have Republican government, it is a way in which you are telling the government to put an end to aristocratic rule. That is, aristocratic rule is not, of course, governed by equality. That is the idea. And they wanted to bring about centralized power which existed since the Song dynasty. It was a way to revitalize local society, to bring about the importance and the vitality of the local society where reform must begin. It's not just in the government that you need to have all these reforms, but from the local society itself, small reformations can lead to a major change, a big change. So he saw that in Chinese history, the Chinese history itself will become fortified. It will start establishing, which will make it modern and democratic. The Chinese history itself will become modern and democratic when the history strengthens. Japan also had a very important role to play in Chinese history, but he always underestimated the power of Chinese nationalism. He did not understand the importance of the nationalism in China. So that was the perspective from which he wrote. Now we need to look at an introduction. China and Japan marked physical contrast. Lot of contrasting factors were there between China and Japan. China is a very vast continental country and it spans many climatic zones. Very big continental country and lot of climatic variation is there. For example, we have got the three major river systems: the Yellow River, Huanghe, Yangtze River, the third longest river in the world. Shangjiang is another name for Yangtze River, and the Pearl River. So these rivers, of course, add to the climatic variations, the climatic zones, the three major river systems. So the topography itself is different. So large part of the country, on the other hand, is mountainous. I have given pictures of the mountainous region, some of the pictures in China. Now we need to talk about the ethnic group which was prevalent in China. The dominant ethnic group in China it was known as the Han group. And the main language of the Han group was Chinese, Putonghua. Okay. And lot of nationalities were also there, but they were very minor in population, such as the Uyghur, Hui, Manchu, Tibetan. And they had dialects which were totally different from the Chinese. And some of the dialects used were Cantonese, Shanghainese, and there were a lot of other minority languages also which were spoken, but in majority the language which was spoken by the Chinese, especially by the Han group, was the Chinese. It is known as Putonghua. Okay, and the others actually used dialects. Dialects are variations of the mainstream language. Chinese food reflects the regional diversity. Okay. So when you look at the food of the Chinese, it shows, obviously it is so overt, it shows that the region is also having a diversity with at least 4 distinct types. 4 distinct types of food was found there. Now this is the Qing dynasty. I've put a picture there. Sorry, the Han dynasty. Okay, the Han dynasty, the map is given on the screen. The best known in southern is Cantonese cuisine. Cantonese cuisine As most overseas Chinese came from the Canton area, that is why Cantonese cuisine was very famous, which includes dim sum, literally touch your heart, an assortment of pastries and dumplings. Dumplings and pastry. Dumpling means something very similar to the momos that you get these days, okay, but not the same thing, but something very similar to it. So they came from Canton area, that is why it was very familiar, it was very similar to that. So this is Cantonese food. And in the north we have got wheat as a staple food, while in Sichuan spices brought by Buddhist monks in the ancient period. Okay, because wheat was a staple food and spices were also used along the Silk Route, spice was actually imported. Chilies were used by the Portuguese traders in the 15th century. So you can see that everything was brought in only because of the people who came into China from other different places. Okay, and they created a fiery cuisine because of all these contributions. The contribution came in from all these places. The Sichuan spices, the Silk Route, the Buddhist monks who used it along the Silk Route, the Portuguese traders, the wheat, everything contributed to a very tasty cuisine. So in eastern China, both rice and wheat were eaten. Okay. Now Japan, by contrast, when you look at the physical aspect of China, we have to talk about Japan now. It is a string of islands. And the 4 islands are Honshu, Kyushu, Shikoku and Hokkaido. I've given the picture of all the 4 islands. You can have a look at all the 4 islands there. It's a string of islands. I've given another picture of the whole map also. So you have got the string of islands here. So this part is given here. And can you look at Okinawa? Okinawa is towards this side. So keep this location, keep this position in your mind as I'm going to explain the other parts. Okinawan chain is the southernmost part, as I told you just now, about the same latitude as the Bahamas. Bahamas also share the same latitude with Okinawa. Okinawa is not same as these 4 islands. So keep that in mind and don't get confused when you study. So more than 50% of the land area of the main islands, more than 50% of the land in Japan is mountainous, and that is why it is very active in earthquake, because of the mountainous region. It is prone to earthquakes, and these geographical architecture definitely have influenced the architecture of Japan. Very important point. And most of the population is Japanese. And there is a very small area known as a small area which is populated by Ainu minority. So Koreans were forcibly brought as labor when Korea was a Japanese colony, and that is how this particular minority came into being. Koreans were there, natives. They were brought into this particular place as Japanese colony. So from there you have got this minority. I've given the picture of the Ainu minority. Look at the dress that they wear, the color and the vibrant look. Yeah. Japan lacks a tradition of animal rearing. When we see or look into the tradition of Japan, we don't see much of animal rearing there. And rice is a staple crop, and fish is a major source of protein in Ainu minority. Rice was a staple crop. Fish is a major source of protein. Raw fish, sashimi or sushi, which is very famous all over the world, has become a widely popular dish around the world as it is considered very healthy. Raw fish. I've given the pictures of everything here. Rice, sashimi or sushi, very tasty, interesting. Now we need to look at Japan. Tokugawa is a very important family in the history of Japan. The political system. So there was an emperor in Japan who ruled from Kyoto by the 12th century. The imperial court lost power to shoguns. So this particular emperor lost its power to shoguns, and they ruled in the name of the emperor. They started ruling in the name of emperor, but emperor was not so powerful at that time. Then from 1603 to 1867, we can see the members of the Tokugawa family who held the position of shoguns. I told you that Tokugawa family is very important in the history of the royal family of the Japan. The country was divided into 250 domains under the rule of lords called daimyo. Country was divided into 250 domains under the rule of lords called daimyo. The shoguns who replaced or who took position instead of the emperor exercised power over the domainal lords, the shoguns. They ordered them to stay at the capital Edo, which is modern Tokyo, for a long period, and this was done so that they will not be a threat to shoguns. So of course the land was divided into 250 domains and lords were asked to take care of these domains, but the shoguns exercised their control over the lords so that the lords will not become more powerful than the shoguns. That was the idea. So they said that you should stay in the capital of Edo so that you will not exert or you will not be a threat to the shoguns. So look at the shrewdness of the shoguns. The samurai was the warrior class. They were the ruling elite and served the shoguns and daimyos. So under the shoguns you have the daimyos, and under the daimyos we have got the samurai or the warrior class, something similar to the kshatriyas that we have in India. Okay. Now in the late 16th centuries there were a lot of changes which took place, especially in the pattern for future development. Three major changes has to be discussed here. One is the peasantry was disarmed. Peasantry could not carry any swords or any form of weapons. Only the samurai group could carry swords. And this ensured peace and order, because only when one group is given the permission to hold swords or carry weapons, it will ensure some kind of system, which ended the frequenting wars, because when people were given access to swords and equipments, it will lead to war. There won't be any peace and order. The daimyo, who came under the shoguns, were ordered to live in the capitals because they were not allowed to extend their power and the shoguns were scared of them. They had a larger degree of autonomy. They lived in the capitals of their domains. That we saw, this point we saw earlier, but they had some freedom and independence also. Autonomy was there. The third point is land survey was continuously done at a regular period of time. It was identified by the owners and taxpayers, and they also graded the land productivity when they came for inspecting the land, the owners and taxpayers. Land surveys were continuously done to ensure a stable revenue base. To ensure a stable revenue base, land survey was done. So these 3 points are very important when it comes to pattern for future development. So look at all these pictures, very important. The daimyo's capitals, the people who lived in the capitals, became bigger. So just like how the shoguns foresee things, the capitals became very bigger by the mid-17th century. Japan was not only the most populated city in the world, Edo, but also other two large cities were highly populated. Apart from Edo, the capital, Osaka and Kyoto was also populated. With half a dozen castle towns, population exceeded 50,000. And most of the European countries at this time had only one large city. So when they had one large city, Japan had many large cities, 3 large cities and dozens of castle towns. This led to the growth of commercial economy gradually, and it created financial and credit systems. So when cities and towns sprung up, it gave a kind of stability in economy, and financial and credit systems also were there. A person's merit began to be more valued than his status. So they started giving more importance to merit, which was the right way, not to the status. If you're born as a ruler, you remain a ruler. It is not like that. When you give something to the society, when you have a merit, that is what they valued. So look at Edo, the place Edo, the pictures are given there. A vibrant culture blossomed in the towns. Fast-growing class of merchants came up. They started patronizing theatre and arts. When people were free, they started patronizing theatre and arts. Literature was already encouraged, so now the merchants started sponsoring and patronizing theatre and arts. A very good point. People started enjoying reading because of that, and they started gifting the writers so that they will encourage writing to earn a living solely by writing. So people who really wanted to write could write, and they were given gift also because of their writing. In Edo, people were allowed to rent a book. When they actually, if they were able to pay the price of a bowl of noodles, they could rent a book. Not own it, but rent it. So that is how popular reading. It shows that reading was very popular. This activity itself was popular, and it gives a glimpse into the scale of printing. That is how printing came into possible, because people started reading and people found interest in reading. So Japan was considered rich because of the luxury goods like silk from China and textiles from India. So everything came into Japan. Silk from China and textiles from India. So this is why we can say that Japan was very rich.